I've played a lot of FM22, so let me tell you what I really think about it. And I'm going to start with the features that were added in this game. And yes, I've got a cold, I'm rather under the weather. So let's start with player ranges. Now, I did think that this would annoy me, as I thought it would just make transfers a little bit more complicated, but actually it is more realistic with a transfer value of a player because it varies from obviously the bottom tier to a top tier, and I quite like that. I do wish there was some consistency when you're selling a player though. I always feel like I struggle to get within that player range when I'm wanting to sell a specific player, not if a player is wanted, but I understand that also could be a little bit more realistic, because if a player is not wanted by anybody, I'm just trying to offload him, then maybe he isn't worth his transfer value, but then surely that should replicate that in his actual transfer value. And I do feel like the transfers in and out, it's not as crazy as what it actually is in real life, and maybe that might be something that they address in the next game, which, by the way, if you wanted to pre-order, you can, and I can get it for you for less than what you can actually pre-order it on Steam if you use code Omega at 2game.com. Now, the staff meetings, I'm really going to brush over it because I just don't use them. I don't know whether you do, maybe it's my style of play, I just don't use them. So if you find them helpful, then by all means, like, great, but for me, I used them at the start. I didn't really see any benefits. Felt really repetitive, so I never continued using them. Deadline day, however. Now, this was one of my favorite features that was added to Football Manager 2022, and I must say, I love it. I think it's great. I love the fact that you go in there, the drama, the skin changes color to the yellow. I think that's fantastic, gives it a new aesthetic, and obviously you can deny using it if you want to, which I think is actually quite an undervalued feature, because there's been occasions where I'm trying to bang out a rebuild simulation and I've done all my transfer business, so I don't need to. So I think that's quite good. I would like to see more panic though. I know, I want it to amp up a little bit more, but you see on deadline day and you hear the stories of clubs who they will go around to different players and inquire about these players. I don't feel like I get that enough. I think sometimes I should be there on deadline day, I think I'm all done, and then bang, somebody inquires about one of my players. They don't come in with a bid, go, how much would you sell him for? And then it leaves the ball in my court. And maybe if I decline it, then they come back with an offer. I think it's too regimented in the fact that they just come in with a bid and they have to be wanted. And on deadline day, sometimes there's not enough panic. I want to see more of the panic. What about the data hub though? This was probably their biggest feature this year, and I must say I think it was a great addition. Not for me personally, because I'm not really a data guy, but I know a lot of you are, and if you really dive into a game of Football Manager, this data hub is probably going to be amazing for you. But there's only a few things in there that I feel are valuable, and not many things that I feel like I can impact and change within the statistics that I see in the data hub. I want to be able to go into my data hub and I see something happening, or I see a statistic, and then I can go to my tactic and I can change it knowing that it will genuinely affect that. Because I don't think that happens enough, really. And I actually want to see more. Not more. I want to see better player data. I want to see things like who presses better, for example. Which one of my players in a certain position is better at pressing? That will be something. Maybe it's already in there and I've just missed it. I don't think it is. Maybe that is something that will be really good, because obviously, I mean, tactically, gauge and press is still the way to go. So having things like that will allow you to pick a player that's better suited to pressing than another player, and it can help you tactically. Now, the gameplay. It's definitely better, isn't it, the gameplay? I know in previous renditions of Football Manager, we've had it where, like, one-on-ones were broken. You could never score a one-on-one, for example, or, I don't know. There's been loads of different game-breaking gameplay things, and I don't think we've had that this year. You could say that maybe the corners, near-post corners, are quite broken, because I've used them a lot. That might be something that we will actually see change, to be honest, because long throws were exactly the same a couple of years ago. But I don't think the gameplay itself has been a problem this year. I've enjoyed seeing the new movements and things like that, and I definitely think we see better goals. 100%. We see more variation of goals. I don't know what it is, but when I simulate and then I watch the goals back, I see way different goals than when I used to play the game, like play it game by game, when I used to stream and stuff. I don't know whether that's a thing. It seems like it's a thing to me anyway. And I know I'm gonna talk about the big elephant in the room here. I know they don't want to upgrade the graphics because it will outdate people who are playing on really old laptops, but it's time, isn't it? It's 2022, and I really think graphics were genuinely better in FM12. People have been posting pictures saying, look at the graphics here in FM12, and look at them now. And yeah, even like regen faces on the pitch, it looks better in FM12. And like I say, it's FM22, and there's genuinely better mobile games with graphics that absolutely smash FN out the park. And I think there could be a time now, which might be now, it could be now, because I already see, I post things on TikTok, and the amount of people that I see put in the comments about this, they're going to miss out on the next generation, because the next generation are used to great graphics. I was used to like PS2 graphics, so playing Football Manager graphics, like I'm used to it. Yes, I play PS5 games where the graphics are incredible and I wish it was the same, but I get that it's not going to happen. But we're getting into a generation now where they're used to like 2015 onwards graphics where everything is in HD and FIFA looks great graphics and stuff like that. They're used to playing FIFA. So trying to get them to transition to Football Manager is going to be next to impossible, because they're just not going to accept it. They're not going to accept the graphics, and I think that needs to be changed. Now, the last thing with the graphics and the gameplay, linking the tactics and stamina was one of the things that they made a big deal about. I feel like it doesn't really make that much difference. It's still gegenpress or die, isn't it? Unless you're using gegenpress. There's only been like 2 tactics I've used all year that have been successful without it, and I think that's just because I had an overpowered team, in all honesty. But it is really gegenpress or die, and if you're playing a low block, you're screwed, really. I haven't really seen many tactics work with a low block. You might have found it. I haven't, and I've used like, 100 different career modes on Football Manager, so maybe that's something. But I remember when we had the call with SI and they said like the stamina is going to play a big part in how your team plays now, and I really don't feel like it has made that much of a difference. But on the contrary to that, I haven't played that much lower league football, so it might be different in the lower leagues. It's very rare that I do lower leagues, so it could just be a me problem, being the fact that a lot of my content is based around players and teams that are higher up in the leagues. I don't know. All right, let's talk about some of my problems with FM22. Budgets. Now, the realism for me really leaves the game when I am a Premier League side and they give me £15 million as a starting budget. Because unless my club is financially dying or they're doing a Leicester City on me, I think we have seen how even newly promoted teams come in and they're willing to spend over £100 million on transfers. Nottingham Forest being the case this year, and obviously if they don't spend that, then they're going straight down. I think it is the time now where you need to really it's difficult, because you can then say like the Premier League is going to be really overpowered, but it is in real life with transfers. There's a reason why there was like 2 billion spent in the Premier League in the transfer window, and the only other team outside of the Premier League who really spent that much was Barcelona. We all know where they're getting that money from just selling assets and stuff. So I feel like things like budgets, we need to be a little bit more realistic, because that could be a problem. Not a problem, but it could be not realistic in the next game. If I'm Aston Villa, for example, who are supposedly got really rich owners and they keep giving me £30 million in the summer, it's not really good, is it? International football. It sucks, doesn't it? It's awful. It's why I never do it. I find it boring. You can't even rest your players when they're training in tournaments. Like, I don't know whether that's been changed, but I know you couldn't before, so it's just awful, and I find it really dull. I don't know how to really improve it, so I've got really nothing on this to help SI, but international football for me just feels really dull and boring. If you have any suggestions for it, I'm all ears, but for me, it's the reason why I never did it in Glory Hunter. I just find it so boring and mundane. Now, I've already covered graphics quite well in the gameplay, but it is a problem, obviously, for me. It is 2022, like I say. I know the game is not built for aesthetics either. Like, the game is supposed to be like a spreadsheet. I understand that. But like I said, they're going to lose out on the younger generation, because if you look at games that have come out recently with graphics like F1 Manager, then you need to start changing things. F1 Manager is one of the most in-depth games ever about motorsport. And yet, if you were to watch the gameplay, it's like you're watching real F1 or you're watching the F1 game. The graphics are insane. Really, really good. So I think FM's fallen behind. And I understand, obviously, for value for money, the game £35, we can't really expect graphics like that. But I'm going to talk about that in the overall at the end. Now, my biggest problem, and this might just apply to me, but there's not enough randomness. Now, as I say, it does probably apply to me more than anybody, because with rebuilds and the short saves that I do, the short save series of stuff that I do, and obviously the amount of experiments and stuff that I do, I think I must have done over 100 different saves now, and like gone further than a year and 100 different saves. But everything is just so predictable. And I think for most scenarios, there's only 2 or 3 outcomes. For example, before Haaland moved to Man City, obviously, which is not in the game, but when he's still at Dortmund, there's only 2 or 3 outcomes where he goes. It's usually either City, PSG, or Real Madrid. It's very rare that I've ever seen him gone anywhere else, I think. Same as Mbappe. When he runs out of contract, he tends to go to Real Madrid or City. Every now and then he goes Man United. Other than that, I think on like 1 or 2 occasions I've seen him go elsewhere. And that's in like 100 different saves. And in 5 years, it's the same 2 or 3 clubs who are winning every single league across Europe. And I know that's 5 years, it's not too much of a difference from the now, but I mean, 5 years' time, do you expect Newcastle to be challenging for the title? Possibly. In 2000, did you expect in 5 years' time Chelsea to be as good as what they were in 2005? Because that came out of nowhere, really. I want more randomness. For instance, the worst one is manager movements. Because if you save a game, remove a manager, and watch who takes control of his job after he's gone, reload it, and do the same, 9 times out of 10, it's the same person. And I know this because I've tried it. When I did the video about trying to get Conte as manager of Spurs, I tried to do it without the editor. I think the editor wasn't even out at that point. That's the reason why I did it. But every time I loaded it, I had to remove 5 different managers before he finally got given the job. And every time I loaded a new game, the same order of the managers happened as it did the first time round, usually starting with Bielsa, then I went to like Luis Enrique and somebody else and somebody else. It was always the same. Jogi Löw, the German manager, for instance, was always one as well. So it was always the same in the exact same order, and it would be exactly the same if you stopped, reloaded it, and did it again. And I think that we need more random. Like, we need clubs to have like tycoon takeovers, just randomly become the new dominant force in the Bundesliga or La Liga, for instance. Like, it's happened in the Premier League twice between 2000 or 2003, was it, when Chelsea Abramovich took over, and 2013 when Man City got taken over and started winning the league, that somebody was tycoon takeovered, that's not a phrase, and then actually started to dominate the league with league titles and look like an unbeatable force. Like, it happened twice in 13 years. Why isn't it? And it could happen again with Newcastle. We don't know yet, it's still early stages. But I feel like if I went 13 years into the future of Football Manager, it would be Bayern Munich, either Inter, AC or Juve at the top of Serie A, Barca, Real Madrid, maybe Atletico at the top, and the Premier League, you know it's probably going to be one of the Manchester clubs or Liverpool. Outside of that, there's no depth. Don't even get something started with France. Like, that's obviously going to be PSG. Like, other than that, there's just nothing changes. I think Football Manager relies on you to impact the norm, and I'd rather see more random stuff. Like, not all the time, don't get me wrong, but, you know, over 100 different saves that I've done, and I don't think I've seen anything abnormal. The only really thing that I ever see is Leeds be really good and get top 4, but that happens so often now that it's no longer random. Like, that happens, I'd say 1 in 2 that they finish top 4 in the first 3 years. It happens quite often. I want to see a Leicester freakishly win the league. Why can't we have that? Overall then, my thoughts on Football Manager 2022. Now, it does come across like I've on it quite a lot. I haven't. I absolutely love this game. I really, really do love this game. I would not have been so into so many of the saves that I have so late in the game cycle if that was the case. And if you think about it, really, £35 for this that I paid at the start of whenever it was, that's an absolute bargain. For the amount of hours I put into it, even if I wasn't creating content for it, I probably would have played loads of it. Like, it's definitely value for money. Don't get me wrong. And I definitely think it's one of the better versions that we've had of the game recently. Like I said, there's been no real big game-breaking bugs or anything like that. No people are complaining about goalkeepers and stuff. Like, I haven't seen any of that. I know there's been a lot of people who have, but overall, I think this game's been a really good one. There is the little bit there to improve, isn't there? And to be honest, I mentioned it earlier, I would pay double. I really would if it had better graphics and it got rid of some of the problems and maybe obviously a few additions into a new game. I would pay double because it would be worth it. 100% it would be worth it, especially graphically. Imagine having a scenarios game mode. Now, this is probably a topic for a different video, but I thought I'd give it to you because I've been watching a lot of the new NBA 2K23 videos that people are putting out, like Kenny, if Kenny Beecham, if probably some of you have watched him, or Six Rings of Steel, for instance, they do the rebuilds on there. Like, I love watching them. They got new scenarios game mode where it's like an era. So it's like the Michael Jordan era, the Larry Bird era, the Kobe era, and it's basically, they've had all the licenses, which Foot Manager might struggle, but it's set database in that time frame at the start of that era. We could have the Chelsea era. We go back to 2004, Jose Mourinho is manager of Chelsea. We could have the Sir Alex era, 1986. Sir Alex has just taken over at Manchester United. What can he do in that time? Arsene Wenger era. There's so many different things that we could have. Pep Guardiola, Barcelona, all these different stuff as a scenario. Or you can have things like, I don't know, where it randomizes stuff, budgets, games, players, clubs. I want to go in there and it would be like, I think Dr. Benji mentioned, like, imagine going into a game where all of the club owners are randomized. So you could have Newcastle's owners at Wolves. You could have the Glazers at Liverpool. I wish. But that's just my suggestions and that's just my thoughts. So if you want to leave yours, by all means, do so. I've got a cracking video coming out on Friday. Make sure you check out. And again, if you want to pre-order FM23, 2game.com, use code Omega. It's cheaper than Steam. It gives you a Steam code. You pop it into your Steam code. Bang, it's there for you to play. Thank you very much. And it helps me out as well. So I do appreciate everybody who's used it so far. See you in the next one.